What's happening, guys? I figured I'd bring you guys along here for a little work on this tailgate. If you watch some of my older videos, this tailgate started out its life as a white tailgate, and my buddy had smashed up his and picked it up on Craigslist or something, and we painted it black, repaired a little bit of damage on it, but since then, that was 2 or 3 years ago, it wasn't shut properly, and it bounced into his salt spreader, so there's a big gouge in it there, a little dent right there, which really isn't a huge deal, but it's pretty close to that damage. There's another dent down here, and there's something else going on over here, but what I want to show you guys on this, and I'll be back in a second, sometimes you can't find damage real easily. The way I go about it is I'll take a small block like this and kind of just rub over it lightly. This has got a piece of 400 on it. You could go 600 or 800. All you're looking to do is put some scratch marks in it to find any dents. I wouldn't go a lot coarser unless you plan on priming and painting the whole tailgate, which at this point is not my plan, but I may prime the majority of it. So I know there's some damage here, and I'll cross sand that. And I'll show you guys, well, I'll do a couple spots and then I'll show you all of the ones. These are the ones that I caught with my eye. There's one right here that I spoke of a moment ago that I know that I saw. I spent a couple hours this morning getting double-sided tape off this because the eraser wheel didn't want to touch it, so we used adhesive remover and basically spending a whole lot of time on it. At least with this 400 grit, I know if I go to blend base coat out over it, it's not going to be a problem because it's black. Oh, see, now there's something I didn't see. I think you guys are catching this. I'm going to flip the screen where I can see it here. But yeah, you can see that pretty well. I mean, I obviously know this big gouge is in it right here. But this is to help me find all the dents in it. He said don't get too crazy with it, but you guys watch my channel long enough to know I'm not going to leave a bunch of dents in something if I can avoid it. Especially if it's in the same panel I'm working on. This is a tailgate. If this was a quarter panel where I was blending into the door, I may or may not fix a dent in the door that turns into a blend panel, but just all depends on what the job's calling for. You know, that all looks pretty good. On this bottom part, I'm not so sure. I know what we will see is where all the emblems were. You'll be able to see all that print through. And I've never ever had much luck getting an emblem imprint out of something, even with priming it. I mean, I suppose if you left your primer set a month and had it out in the sun quite a bit, you'd probably get away with it. I don't know what that is. One thing I will caution, we may run into it later, I had put the emblems back on this with silicone because they were the type that had double-sided tape originally and were individual letters that came on a backing piece, and we tried to save the letters from one tailgate to the next. And I didn't think I'd be redoing it. So, word of caution, we may see fisheyes on this tailgate yet. I worked pretty hard on getting all the silicone off of this before I put any sanding marks in it, but you're going to see here pretty quick. Where those emblems were. And of course, you see this is not glue. That is just a mark from me rubbing on it. It looks like there's still glue on there, but it really is not glue, because I rubbed and rubbed and rubbed. Now I can sand on this pretty good. One thing I will do before I ever put primer on this tailgate is use wax and grease remover on it probably 3 times to make sure that there isn't any. So if there was a little spot of glue where those emblems were, it's a GMC half-ton Sierra, so you can almost see the S there, and it's the SLE package, which that little emblem was there. But getting back to the story, okay, there's major gouge in it up here, but just by dragging the block across it, I can see some pretty good sized dents in it. There's one there. I mean, they're not deep, they're just big diameter. This guy right here, and this guy right here. Now this may not be much of a dent, it doesn't feel like it. I take that back, that may be a little bit of a dent there. We'll block on it a little bit to see, but basically we're gonna try, I don't even know if I'll try pulling this. It is so shallow. I may just feather the paint back a little bit or get a good scuff in it and put some polyester putty over it. This one right here, I'm gonna try and pull it because the brow of the dent, there's a body line that runs through here, actually is pushed out. So I may try and work on that a little bit, but I'll keep sanding on it here. We'll have a little story time, I guess, whatever, while I work on this. See what we come up with. Yeah, that one right there got quite smaller after just a little bit of blocking, so that one's probably going to get a wipe of putty on it. This was this tailgate was painted, like I said, I want to say going on 3 years ago, maybe 2 years ago. It's got Matrix AG40 clear on it. So it's got quite a bit of clear coat on it. AG40 is a Euro style, pretty thick clear. I think I got 3 coats on it. Alright, well, I think I don't want to block on that too hard. But I found the dents. There's one, looks like a scuff right here. That's a candidate for putty. So what we'll do, now that I flip the screen back around, this guy down here that's pretty bad, I'm going to take the paint off around it, and we're going to try and pop some of it up with the dent puller and see what happens. So I'll bring you guys back in a flash here, and we'll go for it. Alright, we got the dent puller set up. I got a ground clamp on it, and my little bar right here. And we're just going to probably pop one right in the center of that. It's really not a deep dent, but it's just enough. Really, maybe I don't have a ground. It does not appear that I have a ground. Which is strange. Tailgates are pretty thin, you really can't reef on them too hard. Usually what I do with something like this is I'll let it weld the tip on, and I'll just hold some pressure on it up, because usually the metal's warm. And I'm going to say that one pin draw probably pulled it up enough. So let's check. Take the DA to it with some 180 and feathering that paint back. I'll throw a straight edge up on it. Alright, I got a piece of 180. Now normally you're going to want to keep the DA flat, but for this, it's on a body line, there's really nowhere to keep it flat. And I'm going to try and contain the repair area to as small of an area as I can really feasibly do. basically I'll show you guys what I did here. Even though you kind of watched me from a little bit of a distance, I didn't have a big zoom on this. I put 2 different spots in it where I tried to draw it up. And if you look, I don't know if the light will anger this camera, but she's pretty much dead level all the way across. A little goofy right on the body line, but I don't want to pull on that body line. But that one's close enough. Then you saw me run the DA sander over this spot here that I'm going to wipe just a little low. I'm going to wipe it real tight. I'll wipe this one real tight as well, and this one too. I'll scuff them up a little better, and I'm going to feather that out. And normally I wouldn't wipe it, but I know how many layers of paint are on this, so I'm going to wipe this one too. I'm not going to dig way down into it. I'll just go till it starts to feather out and give it a 180 scratch for some polyester putty. We'll bring you back. All right, I didn't film the filler work here, but I basically just wiped this one real good. Now, yes, I wiped it all the way out to the paint edges, but a lot of that's going to get sanded back. This is directly over paint, which is fine. You can argue bare steel to paint, but for something that small, it should be just marvelous. One thing I'm noticing, I ran out of Rage Ultra filler and grabbed the Extreme because that's all they had. And when this filler isn't really warm and runny, it is really pinhole prone. I decided not to use my glazing putty because it sands like garbage, the stuff that I have. So I just wiped them real light. Most of them are okay. That one's probably going to have a couple pinholes in it that I'll have to wipe again, but I'll bring you back. I'll basically sand this real quick with some 180 on the DA. And then this one I will probably hand block just a little bit, and then I'll feather the paint back out so you guys can see what that looks like, because we don't want a bunch of 180 scratches in this paint. We'll have to come back and dissolve all of those 180 scratches with some 320 before we prime. So that's what we got. I'll bring you guys back after a while. So there you go, there's my first coat. Not super wet, but it's on there. So I'll put a second coat on this, and on my second coat, I'm gonna come inside and try and just, excuse me, I'm trying to hold the paint gun at the same time. Come inside and just hit the bodywork areas so that I have primer outside of the bodywork areas. Bring you back and show you what it looks like when I'm done. Alright, I'm not sure how well the camera is gonna pick this up, but I think the best one to look at is that one there. I'm going to set this camera down Yeah, maybe I'm not gonna set it down. I don't know if you guys can see this or not. So first coat is way out here. You can see almost a line right here where the second coat is. And the third coat, you can see the area inside of it. So they're about 1 inch or 3/4 of an inch apart. The first coat is sprayed the widest, and that leaves you an open edge for the primer to let solvents escape. This particular primer is supposed to be a 1-hour primer. It doesn't say it's a speed primer, but last time I used it, I let it set overnight. Usually I have the luxury to do that, but tailgate's all primed up. As much primer as I put on that, I could have just primed the whole thing, but I didn't feel like blocking the whole thing.